Yo, good afternoon, everybody. This is Trey Cadwell reporting to you with the creation story. So, in this presentation, I'm going to give a brief summary of the creation story that is in the book of Genesis, and then I'm going to explain to you and tell you about pieces of art and pieces of literature that were influenced by this story. So, buckle your seatbelts and enjoy the ride. So, in the Bible, the creation story is explained as the world started off as empty, without form, for 6 days, 6 whole days. That's almost a week. God spoke into darkness. He spoke light, sky, land, vegetation, and living creatures into existence, as well as mankind. I'm sure everybody in this room knows about Adam and Eve and the fruit that was eaten and messed everything up, but that's a different story for a different day. At the end of each day, though, within this 6 day period, he pronounces his work is good at the end of the day. So I looked up some art that were influenced by this story, and Michelangelo caught my attention the most. Michelangelo, for those who don't know, was a famous artist whose pieces were inspired by the Bible back in the day. His portrait, named The Creation of Adam, was a part of his famous Sistine Chapel, which is beautiful, by the way. And like in that Sistine Chapel piece, it included other historical events that were recorded in the Bible. This particular portrait, The Creation of Adam, shows how Michelangelo pictured the creation story in his mind. So, the source that I looked up broke this picture down in a very, very interesting way. And I kind of wanted to share it with you guys because it helped me think deeper and go into depth in the picture, the portrait, and not just think about what I see, but actually try to break down the portrait in detail. So this picture, the first thing that everyone notices is the right arm of God going to touch Adam. But nobody ever really pays attention to the left arm of God. The left arm of God, as explained in my source, seems to be lacking power. It seems that it's not strong because of the way it's slouching over the little young new angel that's on the side of God. So that was intriguing because we're basically saying that a piece of God was weak in a way. I'm not saying that because it's not true, but according to the portrait, that's what seems to be the message. Also, they go into detail about the angel that's actually on the side of God. They said that the angel was looking at Adam with the keenest interest, which means a desirable interest, and just was intrigued by Adam. Now the question is, was she intrigued by Adam out of desire, or was she intrigued by the good works of God and what he created? And that's what was brought up in my source, and that's what the argument was. Like, they don't have an answer for it, but it's just something to think about to make the wheels turn. Also, what I didn't include in my slide is that she's gripping God's like wrist almost, and the question that occurred was she gripping the wrist out of desire for Adam, or was she gripping the wrist because she didn't want God's arm around her? So that just was very intriguing to me, and how Michelangelo pictured this whole historical event was just interesting to see. So yeah. Next, I looked up a literature influence that this story had on an artist, and I came across James Weldon Johnson. He was a writer who has surely been influenced by the Genesis story. He was a writer during the development of the Harlem Renaissance, and one of his most known free verses was from his collection called God's Trombones, and that piece was called The Creation. This piece explained the creation of the world in a poetic format, but in a different type of way. So this poem, or this free verse that he wrote, wasn't a rhyming free verse. It was no rhyming pattern, no ABBA or anything like that. It was just his words. He just pretty much told the story in his words, putting a lot of artistic images in your mind while explaining it. For example, he explained God putting light into the world, and he pretty much said that God gathered it up in a shining ball and flung it against the darkness, spangling the night with the moon and the stars. So it's like the Bible definitely did not explain God doing that like in that way at all. So he just really put his little own spin in on it, and it was just very, very interesting to see. I couldn't really break down the free verse that he wrote because it was so straightforward. It wasn't like he was beating around the bush. He used metaphors, but it wasn't like metaphors that was just like over your head and you had to sit down and dissect the whole thing for it. It was pretty straightforward. He just put his own artistic field into it. So that's a piece of literature that caught my attention that was influenced by the creation story. Uh, these are my sources that I use. I use one source for each person. I use one source for Michelangelo, and I use one source for Mr. James. And that is it. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Have a good day and good luck on yours.